Nice little speaking talk about the wonderful world of the Windows mixed reality environments. Who here has already heard about Windows mixed reality? Right, I'm going to expect a larger hand. Who's heard of VR or virtual reality? There we go. So we've got some newbies, some new experiences, and lastly, who has already got a Windows mixed reality headset? Yeah, Mike at the back put his hand up considering he works for Microsoft. Right, so I'm Simon Darkside Jackson. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm actually a dual Microsoft MVP because I hold both Windows and Xbox. If you want to ask me about Windows stuff, you can. If you want to ask me about the Xbox or deploying to the Xbox, you can as well. I've written a few books. I've done a load of Unity stuff. I've done numerous conferences and things with Microsoft, and as of late, I've now been dragged into the lovely world of Windows mixed reality, or basically VR in general. So I'm out there delving into VR toolkits, building solutions, working with people to get the things done. But the only thing I can't find time to do is actually build my own stuff. Unfortunately, being an MVP is you're always helping everybody else, or writing books to help everyone else. When it comes to writing your own games or building your own projects, finding the time is a little bit more tricky. But anyway, that's me. I'm out on the interwebs. I'm basically Simon Darkside J, wherever you want to find me. But anyway, we're here about Windows mixed reality. So last year, Microsoft entered into the whole VR camp with their new offering, providing virtual reality at a much cheaper cost, and also the fact that having multiple manufacturers delivering headsets rather than just any single manufacturer. The mixed reality story actually started sometime before this. Who's heard of the HoloLens? Right, I'm going to say smaller. Who's tried the HoloLens? Yes, about a few people. If you get a chance at any trade show or anyone else, get into a HoloLens line, no matter how long it is, and try it, because it is truly amazing. Wearing a computer on your head and looking at the world and then having things augmented and put on it is great. But anyway, we're here on mixed reality, which is more the other end of the spectrum. Now, when we talk about mixed reality, this is regarding to a family or a range of experiences that you can have provided direct from Windows 10. So we've got the one end of the spectrum here, got realities. This is the real world. We've got physical desks, physical things in the world, obviously what we're currently experiencing, except for those probably on high-grade drugs, who probably experience things that are slightly different. When we dial this forward to things like the HoloLens, is that we start augmenting the space with additional things, so we can actually paint something on a wall, put a nice little dog in the corner and have it follow us around, and also having this recognize the real world for what it is and placing things within it. Within the land of mixed reality, we can take this further, so we have like virtual presence, where you're actually having virtual people in your virtual world and having virtual concerts, but still in a real room. If you look at the videos online around this, you'll see things like a group of people stood around a car. Some people actually have the physical car. Some people see a virtual car, but pretty much the same thing. But everyone experiences the same thing in the same world. When we dial this all the way out to the end, everything's virtual. You know, I'm stood here, but basically what I see is something completely different. And in the land of mixed reality is the fact that we're dialing this back just a smidgen, just a bit. Simply because, obviously, if you're wearing a VR helmet, we have to recognize that there is a physical space you're walking around in. If I walk out this door, I either will walk out the door or walk into a wall. So we've got to rein some of that back in to keep the presence or the area that you're walking around in, as this is my physical play space, so I don't go walking off a cliff, which apparently can be quite traumatic if you're wearing a VR headset and actually fall off a cliff rather than just seeing a virtual one. Although, who's seen the videos of people wearing the headset on the top of a tall skyscraper and then someone pushed them? Hilarious. Except for the person wearing the headset who probably nearly has a heart attack. Now, the mixed reality setup as well is more than just the headsets. It encompasses everything. So it's from your mixed reality ready PCs, whether this for your baseline intro specification to say I can just about run VR at a good spec, to their ultra spec itself. We have the headsets, and we also have these lovely motion controllers, which is pretty much the same as what we have with other VR setups, with one key difference. Everything you see on the screen is all it is. So who's using a Vive or an Oculus VR headset? Right. And how many people have tripped up and spent hours trying to set up the environment ready to run for it? The big difference here is the fact that with Windows Mixed Reality, that's all you need. You don't need to be screwing holes in the wall and trying to put light beacons and things like that. This is all it is. Now, one thing Microsoft did quite well here is the fact that Microsoft don't build a headset. Yes, they built the HoloLens, that's one thing, but all they did was build a specification which allowed, at the moment, 6 manufacturers. There are actually 2 more in the works. 2 who were announced at CES are actually bringing out more headsets, and I don't expect this train to stop. The prices, headsets range from anywhere from about £300 to about £500. Although in all the Black Friday sales, I heard quite a lot of people are actually getting them for about £200. So it's very affordable, very good entry level. But each of these manufacturers have put their own little spin on how the headset works. So whether it's a nice lovely pixelated style from the Asus, or we've even got the Samsung headset, which basically has built-in headphones and also has settings to adjust it for your eyes and things like that. Each manufacturer has gone their own way around how they're going to do these things. But it's the same headset, same software, same everything else. You simply plug it into your Windows 10 PC, make sure it's up to date, and that's it. No additional setup is required. Now, as I said, one of the main differences is the fact that the Windows Mixed Reality headsets use what are called inside-out tracking, which means everything to control tracking of the headset, tracking the controllers is built into the headset. There are 2 special sensors, if you want to come and look at this later, which basically do all the tracking for everything. With the likes of Vive and Oculus, you need additional beacons or sensors or setup, normally about 2, or if you want the more advanced setting, about 3. And if you want to change your setup or move it, that means you've got to unscrew them from the wall, pack them up with you, and go along. The Mixed Reality headset is perfect, especially for me, going around doing presentations. I can't imagine trying to do this for all the different presentation sessions I've got to end up having to do. I'll show you later how simple this is. Just plug it in and go. Right. Details. It's all about the details. Now you notice this, the price are in dollars, because when I originally wrote this deck, this was all American. It's now in the UK's, but it's come down. So you've got the high-end range, which is the Samsung. That's about £500, £550 now to buy. And it is seen as the premium headset as well. So really nice rigid body design. They have antibacterial pads, so which you can detach, put into the washing machine, and they keep it all nice and clean. Anti-fogging stuff. They even have a way to adjust the sensors for different eye levels. So if you've got a really wide distance between your eyes, it's called the IPD, or the interpupillary distance. Try saying that after a few pints. It's not going to happen. But it can allow you to adjust it. All the rest are all fixed, and you adjust it through software. So that's like the really highest end. And then the price has come down from there. The Acer, which I've got, is around £200 or 250-ish now, depending if you go to the right place. If you buy it with a PC, it's even cheaper. In fact, I think with some PCs I've seen, you actually get the headset practically for free. So it's worth shopping around for deals and things. Now, the resolution of this is high. It's almost double of what is for the current generation of virtual reality headsets out there today. Announced at CES, the other headset manufacturers have gone, whoa, and come out with their better ones. But they're still going to be priced higher than what these are. But basically, for your entry-level headset, you're getting a very high resolution. That's like a 3K resolution. It's 14 foot, 2800 by 1600, or 1440 per eye, effectively. And that's an extremely crisp resolution, especially if you're reading text or looking at things from a distance. About the only negative thing you can see is the fact that all current generation VR headsets have to use what's called a Fresnel lens, which means you get a perfect view if your eyes are dead center. Off center, it gets blurry, or if you're looking right off to your right. But what you'll find is the majority of VR experiences you use and the ones that you play is once the headset's on, you can see fine. You're only ever really looking forward. You're not really looking at the corner, right? Because that's how you drive the VR experience. They have a base refresh rate of 90 Hz, so make sure it keeps it fast, keeps it free. If you drop it, the base resolution that the run things are basically at 60 hertz. That's like the low-end entry-level PC. So you can actually run all of these headsets off a laptop, if you wish. Fairly medium spec laptop, but a fairly good laptop. But I'm running this off a PC just because I can. The only connections you need is a HDMI and a USB 3. But they're both fairly modern connections. You also need Bluetooth. And that's also modern Bluetooth. So if you're Bluetooth not up to it, you need a good Bluetooth adapter. It's the little things they tell you about. And within the experience themselves, there's already a wide range of experiences. There's also the ones built into Windows itself. They're the native Windows 10 mixed reality applications, in which the store is growing at about 5 a week. Everyone just keeps throwing more stuff on there. But not to be outdone, the fact that fine, these are all on the Windows Store. Who's using Steam or Steam VR? He says. Show of hands, yes. Right, so every title that's currently on Steam VR is also accessible to Windows 10 because Microsoft basically got hold of Steam and said, right, we want to write something to make you work with us. So all the thousands of VR titles that are currently on Steam are also working on mixed reality. So from day one, you've got a huge array of content already out there to play with if you're a consumer. If you're a developer, it makes life even easier because it means that you can build for whichever SDK and you know you're going to be able to hit everybody with it. But more on that later. Right, so that's fine if you're a consumer. There's all the consumer piece around the fact that there's the headsets. You can all get it on. It's nice and easy. Certainly by far the quickest setup ever, which we'll demonstrate in a bit. But how do you want to get started as developers? Because obviously we want to build solutions for these things. So first and foremost place is the fact that is the Windows developer site, which gives you all the tools and information for building for mixed reality. Now, one interesting thing here is that you're effectively building a Windows 10 universal app, which means once you've built it, it's going to run on Windows 10 for the mixed reality. It will also run on HoloLens with zero effort. It'll then also run on Xbox, but there's no VR on Xbox yet, he says. Don't ask me about that, I can't say anything. Getting started, basically you need to have Windows 10 with the full Creators Update installed, which now is actually live. At the time I did this, it was still inside a preview. But you basically make sure your PC is up to date and install Visual Studio. And that's it. You know, this is Windows. They don't make things difficult when you're actually building for these things. There's no extra software, no extra tools. You just need to have Windows 10 and Visual Studio installed. If you also want to target HoloLens, and you also can install the HoloLens emulator, which gives you a few extra little things, but allows you to test across things. Built in with the entire project and everything else is a full simulator, so even if you don't have a headset, you can still test and play with this. For a development PC, I mean, the specs they can actually use for mixed reality themselves are quite low-ish. You need a Core i5 Intel machine with about 8 gig of RAM, and at least, they say a GTX 950, but basically a 1050 or 1060 card is enough to run it, development spec. I'd probably recommend more like a GTX 1080 and at least a Core i5 with 16 gig or an i7, realistically, for doing development work. Although saying that, this PC, which cost me £700, Core i5 with 16 gig in it, runs everything perfectly. So there's no big outlay, no huge expense. When developers started out in the Oculus or the Vive land, you found that you needed like a 1500 or 2 grand PC just to actually run the thing. Windows at least has brought that whole spec down, so it's a lot more accessible, especially to the developers. Although I say one thing that they don't really state on there is make sure you have an SSD. Don't try and run this off a physical drive. It's just not a good idea. When you installed it, in Windows 10 is built into the mixed reality development setup and simulator and everything. You know, it's all built into the operating system. You don't have to install anything. Once you run it up, you have a full simulator built into the actual tools themselves, which we'll show in a bit, which give you full access to controlling for the headset, controlling from controllers, even doing speech input. You know, it all just works, as you pretty much would expect. To enable the simulator, it's a case of you run the mixed reality setup as you would, and then you simply hit the button that says simulator. It's not more difficult than that. It's a case you just turn it on. The PC will then switch over to say, right, I'm not using a headset, I'm now using the simulator. Then if you want to go back, you switch it back. Very simple, very easy. But the only thing you'll need is admin privileges. But who doesn't have that anyway? I'll put that on, but hey. So like I say, with the simulator itself, it allows you to move around, position the headset, do a load of testing, and it gives you a wide range of things you can do and test in the environment. But the only thing it can't test for is walking off into the sunset, with wearing the headset and then being dragged back because the cable snapped your head back. With a simulator, obviously, it's just simulated. It's just keep that in mind, he says. Right. So for building, Microsoft recommends using Unity. I mean, the SDK and the tools are all built into Windows 10, the Windows 10 APIs. I am working with the Monogame team to try and get the whole mixed reality setup working for that, but it means a few tweaks to how Monogame works. So the primary development studio at the moment is Unity. Unity has also now built in full support for Windows mixed reality. So again, there's no additional setup or test. You simply target the UWP platform. You go into the settings for virtuality and say, right, I want Windows mixed reality, and that's it. I mean, you don't have to install anything else at that point because it just works. It's all built into Unity. And it actually does work, even though it's Unity, which is nice. We had a few little things going wrong in the beginning, but it's all sorted now. So if you're actually using one of the modern versions of Unity, either Unity 2017.2 or 2017.3, it should all just work. Trademark, should. Right, so if we're building for a virtual environment, there's several concepts you need to be able to get your head around for when building these things. First and foremost is gaze. It's the primary thing that most VR titles don't take account of unless they're just a headset-only experience, which is where is the user looking? What am I looking at? Where am I actually interacting with objects based on gaze? If I launch up the basic virtual reality experience within mixed reality, that's the default thing you have. So you can actually control everything just by looking at it. It's a powerful thing which a lot of developers don't take account of. Even if you're using motion controllers, it's taking account of what am I looking at? What am I focusing on? And within Gaze, within the whole API for Windows 10, this is supported both on HoloLens and also what we class as the immersive headsets, or the mixed reality headsets themselves. It's perfect for doing like actions on things I'm looking at, or doing something different because I'm looking at it. Mike's got a lovely butterflies demo, so you can control specific butterflies based on which one I'm looking at, and doing little things like that. The next thing which really stands out the whole mixed reality platform is voice. And Windows 10 is about the only one that provides this. You've got Cortana support in mixed reality by default. So you can actually provide speech-based commands for your virtuality experience itself. So you can do different commands and different things based upon what you're saying. If you then pair that up with what you're looking at, so you can say, I see this butterfly, make it fly, and off it flies. There's no control, nothing else, it's just doing. It doesn't have to be the primary input method, but it can be a supplementary one to assist or engage with the experience where it's going around. It's interesting to see the fact that a lot of people are really shocked by this when they actually start to talk to their games, or talk to projects themselves. Actually, the other main mode of input now is these motion controllers. Yes, I'll admit they're not the prettiest ones in the world. Everyone keeps saying the Vive ones are prettier. Well, these are Generation 1 devices. I can only see they're actually improving. These basically your left and right hands controls, and how you to then have directed input into the environment. There are buttons on these things. There are accelerometers for controlling where it moves. There are gyros to tell what pose you're holding the hand in. And if you've seen some really bad VR experiences where your hand is shown and it's like contorted around there because you're twisting it around, just things to be aware of. But they have an array of inputs and how they work. There are grab controllers, there are trigger controllers. Unlike other VR headsets as well, these will have both touch pads, everyone can have a look at these later, and also a thumbstick. Most other controllers only have one or both one of those, I should say, which gives you a wider range of inputs you can do. and the controllers recognize what you're doing. And it's interesting, in fact, if you actually just sit in this and actually just look at the controller, what it's just in the Cliff House from the very beginning, you can see all the different things. Also look at ways to overlay actions on the controllers. You'll see a lot of VR solutions actually use the controller itself as an input. So you can actually shoot at the controller and do something else. The Google Earth VR solution handles this brilliant where if you hold the controller up to your face, you then look at Street View. Or if you shoot your hand, it's Street View, and in and out into things. So don't look at these as simply your hands. You've got to look at these as fully interactive devices and how you're building into these experiences. So you look at all the way these different things work. When we're building experiences, is that one of the things mixed reality really brings to the fold is the fact that we're not just looking at 3D or immersive content, it's even 2D. You can actually build a full 3D virtual office having 2D screens. You can have a 2D screen up on one wall and move around. You can pin things around a virtual environment and actually have those as screens. I think in some of the demos that Microsoft done, they've seen, oh well, I can run my entire office just in VR. So here's my Outlook, here's PowerPoint, here's a couple of Excel spreadsheets. I wouldn't say them too long. Or here's videos and things like that. I mean, one big powerful experience in this is there's a full video wall player where you can look at simple 2D movies, or then you can direct yourself into an immersive 3D experience and just taking over the environment. So beyond the 2D is then the fully immersive experiences where you're taking yourself out of the world and into your own generated environment, whether you're floating through space or whether you're actually just walking along a construction site. Well, as far as the tether will take you. You know, you get a 3-meter tether with this. If you're lucky, you can actually get a good extension cable with that. But building these environments themselves is that there's no right or wrong to say you have to have one or the other. Look at both. Look at different ways to actually build the experience of the environment when you're looking at these solutions. It's not just a one-stop shop of a nice little shooting game. You know, pan it out and see what other experiences you can actually throw into a project. It says throw in casually. Right, so when you actually want to get started, several resources there. You can actually just go direct to Unity itself and just get started, or there are several projects on GitHub to get you going quicker, or other websites themselves. One of the biggest resources is the Mixed Reality Toolkit, or formerly known as a Holo Toolkit. And this provides you a full, engaging, interactive experience of how to build mixed reality solutions. But they've also gone beyond that. They actually allow you to give different mechanisms and different ways and show you different ways to actually do things within a project itself. When you're actually reaching out with a motion controller, how do you grab an object? How do you make it so the fact that when you grab it, is it snapped to it and fixed to your hand? Or is it actually a spring joint to actually just follow you? Or can you throw it and can you not? I know lots of different experiences of how you can actually control all the different inputs and mechanisms that are in this control and in this project. There's a lot of work going on with this. The only downside with the Mixed Reality Toolkit today is that it's only for the Mixed Reality headset. So when you're looking at a cross-platform solution, it means you've got to build one and then build another, he says. There are toolkits called there's the Virtual Reality Toolkit, which I would have recommended up until last week, until the developer said he's not going to start building or investing in it anymore. But actually, in conjunction with the Mixed Reality team, they're actually looking at how they can build a multi-platform solution into the Mixed Reality Toolkit. So it's not just a build once and throw away, it's build once and then extend it and build it to other platforms. We're saying that when Microsoft has also entered in sort of the OpenVR or OpenXR project where you can build it for an open API and it will work on any headset. So there's a lot of other things that are coming down the line, but the first thing foremost that you need to do is actually get in there and start building these experiences, building these applications and how you're actually going to evolve these things. There are a load of videos on Microsoft Build for learning and building mixed reality solutions. I think, Mike, you've got several blog posts and things for actually having to do things. And these are great for getting you started, for getting you thinking, giving you ideas, because the one biggest thing with virtuality is coming up with the ideas of what solution you're going to do. GDC have also posted a load of their historical virtuality developer conference videos online. And you simply look those up and They're fascinating. There was one where they were going about building immersive experiences. And one studio basically sat down and built 400 prototypes. They spent maximum of 4 hours on each of them, working on what kind of things they can do. And they even built like a Mario game in VR. And changing is the fact that instead of a 2D presentation of looking at, you just got a VR camera that's walking around the player as you're playing with them. Obviously meant for a seated experience, but it gives the world what you can actually try and do, and lots of different things you can try. Also, don't be afraid to actually borrow off anyone else. So looking at what people have done and think, oh, I can try and do that. Also, another big source of information is the Microsoft site itself. They've got a huge catalogue of array of information, including the whole Academy series, which teach you about building mixed reality solutions. There's a whole course going through from start to finish of how do I build something for gaze? How do I build something for the motion controllers? How do I build something for voice? And so on and so forth. Also looking at scale. When you're building these VR experiences within your 3D solution, scale is key. Help is always at hand to those who wish to find it. And for this case of this, it's the HoloLens, the mixed reality set help is all on hand on Microsoft. There is tons of experience from loads of people actually building experience on these things. They've gone through the realms of what is possible, what's not. And it's also a good place to ask questions if you ever get stuck, as well as probably on GitHub and some of the other virtual reality help sites. One of the things everyone who's into it also try Slack. There's lots of Slack channels now. I keep slacking off from work and people haven't noticed yet, so it's quite fun. Who's getting Slack overload? There's too many channels and too much chat everywhere. And then someone had set up a chit chat thing and I pause it for an hour and come back and there's 240 messages and I think, I'm just not going to read that. Who has time to read chit chat, Slack chats? Well, anyway. Right, okay, so that's the talk part of this. The next part we're just going to go into demo things. So anyone actually got any questions about building mixed reality things or headsets and stuff? Ask away. Silence. Go on, Pete, go on. Start the question.
Studio Community Edition?
Yep, every single edition of Visual Studio is supported for developing mixed reality experiences. In fact, no, that's not true anymore. I've got Enterprise on there. I always used to only ever run Community, simply because I do VR tutorials or development tutorials, and basically the entry bar always has to be the lowest point for everybody. So no matter what version of Visual Studio you're running, except for Visual Studio Code, there's no mixed reality plugins for that yet. But if you're using VS Community, which is free, you got your Windows 10 installed on your PC, mostly free if you bought it with a new PC. There's zero outlay cost apart from going and buying a headset, or if you want to run the simulator beforehand. Even Unity, which is probably the easiest tool to start building these things, is completely free. It's free. Let's get started. Right, anyone else any questions on things? Yep?
So far I've only experienced the Vive, and I
Yep.
was just wondering how this experience stands against the Vive experience.
Interesting. Right, okay, so separating out what is VR and what is provided by the headsets themselves. VR itself, when you're actively playing it, you will notice very little difference. At the end of the day, it is still VR. We're not providing input into what's into the real world. You're given a boundary. This is your play space, which is exactly the same as the Vive. The only other difference which people pick up in is the tracking, which I'll talk a bit more later. Because this is an inside-out tracking system, so everything is built into the headset. Okay? Headset has two sensors looking forward, we're actually looking slightly down. So you look at it, it's actually looking about that way. So it's tracking all the controllers from like your entire arm's reach within your field of view and picking up, pairing that up with what sensor data it's actually getting out of the sensors themselves for orientation and everything else. So when it's in view, you've got 100% confidence you know exactly what's going on. Now the thing most people then pick up on or start going, it's not the same, is that once I take that out of view, I can't see it. Now the SDK and everything else is still getting full sensor data of motion, things and everything else, and as long as you're moving, it's still got perfect tracking. But when it's behind me, if I stop moving, then all I've got is rotation, and I won't see it again until it comes out. Now, what a lot of people try to pick up on is that, oh, well, I can't shoot from behind me, I can't do this. And I'm sorry, but it's all rubbish. Because at the end of the day, the SDK and the API around is that it tells you if it's in view or if it's not. And you'll find 99% of all the VR experience you use, your hands are in front of you because you need to see your hands to do whatever it is you're doing. But the few differences are things like shooting games where I need to be able to put my hand over here, or I want to be able to put a shield over here and do something over here. And what you find is that all the titles we showed earlier, so I'll go back to these. Superhot involves basically picking up objects and throwing them in any direction. It has zero issues with this forward tracking system because it knows the fact that if it's in view and I'm grabbing, it's great. If I'm throwing over that way, it knows, right, my hand's going off that way and it's throwing in that general direction, and it knows if you're going to let go or not. So it doesn't need to know exact tracking when it's there because you're simply throwing it. Space Pirate Trainer, which is one of is a really fantastic, I have this, so you can try it today if you want. Has two guns, and yes, you're shooting in all different directions and things. Has zero problems with it being out of view. Because again, it notes the fact that if it's in view, I've got full control, can rely on the sensors. If it's out of view, then I'm relying on the movement of the control and the tracking, and the API will tell you 99% of the time exactly what it's doing and where it's going. When I actually, I recently went and had a Vive because my next door neighbor had one in nicely, but lent it to me. And after about 2 hours of setting up the beacons, which is not fun, I can tell you, is that, yes, perfect, fine, all back into, until one of my children walked in front of the beacon. And then the SDK just basically went, ooh, and my arms suddenly flung over. I was actually playing a space game where I had to maneuver myself around the space station, pulling my arms back in two. And suddenly one of my arms just basically floated off into space, and I'm like, where's it going? Because in the Vive SDK, when you're building those solutions, it does not tell you when it loses tracking of that controller. You're 100% reliant on it's perfect tracking, it's going to work, until it doesn't. And then it goes freakishly out. One of my children was also playing, there's a nice free game called Star Wars Droid Repair Bay. Nice little tool where basically all you have is two little grippers and you're fixing droids. Great. Until he was having problems adjusting the Vive because it's a much different way of holding it onto your head. And I went over to go and help him and do it. Vive then went, I've lost tracking! And then when it regained tracking, the controllers were backwards. And I couldn't fix it until I turned it all off and turned it back on again. Granted, some of these are fairly rare experiences simply because if you're running a Vive or you're running an Oculus, when you're mounting your beacons, you're meant to put them above head height, which means you do have to fix them really to a wall. I was using them on microphone stands, still quite high, but you could block it. And if you have it really up high, they don't have as many issues, but they do have an issue, is the fact that if you walk in front of it, it freaks out. With these, I've only ever had one occasion when it freaked out, and that's because my kid had dropped the controller and it rolled on the floor. And it couldn't work out exactly where it sent it until I picked it up and passed it to him. Now, if we have time, I suggest everyone have a quick try this, and I'll show you this in the demo. The inside-out tracking for these controls themselves is spot on. I mean, into real world, okay, so I can leave them on the counter, walk up to them, and pick them up. With the VR headset on, not looking at these controllers, you know, it is perfect. He said, well, not like perfect, but as close to perfect as you're going to get it realistically. I've also used this in various light conditions. There's a few different videos and things. One video I recommend watching is there's a channel called Mixed Reality TV on YouTube, and he's basically done a ton of reviews on these. He's even, because you can plug this up to a fairly good laptop, taking it outside. Although he does demo it in a car park, I would not recommend trying this on a car park because he nearly got run down by a lorry. Downside of being outside, but he did various things. The only situation it didn't work in was on grass, because wherever the inside-out tracking is, it didn't like grass for whatever reason. Maybe it confused it for weed, I don't know. It just didn't like it. But hard surfaces, he basically coned off an area, set it up, and that was it. He was walking outside until his battery died, and then he realised maybe he should have brought another battery. But anyway, any other questions?
How long can people wear the headsets for comfortably?
Right. So comfort, obviously, when you're wearing these headsets themselves, there's a various degree of how people have perceived these. So the Vive and the Oculus are fairly weighty. They're a couple of pounds, and when they're sitting on your head, all the weight is on your front. Even when you've got the straps and everything else balanced out, if you get it just right, you might be okay. But you still have a limited lifespan because it is fairly weighty. Again, we're in the break. I expect someone to come pick this up. Because when I had this delivered, I even wondered if it was in the box. This thing weighs next to nothing. I'm not going to try topping it. And I've had kids playing this for about 8 hours. And they didn't notice. Now, okay, fine, kids, they're quite energetic. So I had the in-laws round and put it on them. And it's a case of they couldn't feel it. So these provide a much more long time to actually playing it. They only obviously got to take into account the fact that at the end of the day, you've got a tiny screen right pointing at your eyes. So the only thing you might cover is like some eye strain. One other good thing is the fact that these work perfectly with glasses. I've noticed a lot of people, the Vive is not too bad, but the Oculus Rift is a bit pushy against the head, so you can't really wear glasses with it comfortably. These, no problem. My daughter wears glasses and it's fine for her most of the time, except when she has a headache. Apparently migraine really interferes with having bright light shining in your eyes for some reason. But from comfort-wise, they're certainly the most comfortable. The next up with the Vive itself, and then the Rift beyond that because it's a bit heavier. There are some other newer headsets coming out which offer 8K resolution, but apparently they're a little bit more weighty. So you always got to take weight into account for how long you're going to use these things. But this is certainly by far the most comfortable thing next to a HoloLens. Yep.
How are these supporting mixed reality? Cameras pointing out, is there something I'm missing?
Right, so mixed reality relates to the family of devices. So it's a command return that covers everything from HoloLens to this. Now these generation one devices, there is no VR, there's no AR, there's no augmented reality, there's no camera looking out. What the sensor is tracking is actually exactly the same sensors that are in the HoloLens, just 2 of them. And what this is tracking is light and depth all across the scene that you're looking out. And it will recognize and remember the environment that you set it up in, most of the time. It's actually quite good in the way it recognizes themselves. And like most of the experiences, you can either set it up for a seated experience where you're not tracking, you're just sitting down. Although you can stand up and move around, doesn't stop you. Or you can basically set up for the walk around experience or the room scale, where basically you then trace out an environment and have it set up. Now I was actually quite surprised. When I tried the Vive, you still have to do that. Even though you've got beacons which tell you, right, this is my physical space and this is where I walk, you still have to tell it, well, this is where I can actually walk around my environment when you're setting it up. The other thing I got really confused with the Vive is that if you set it up for standing and walk around, then fine, use the headset, you walk around. I'm sorry, wrong way around. This is why it's confusing. If set it up for room scale, you use the controller to set up your environment. And as long as it knows where the headset is. If you set it up for sitting down, then you have to use the headset and a tape measure. Don't ask. I spent 5 minutes looking around for a tape measure when it said, right, tell me how high off the floor the headset is. And you're like, it's about this big. Yeah, it works. So no, there is no real world presence in these units today. Not to say another generation won't actually add something. I have seen some experience where they've actually paired it up with like a Magic Leap controller and other things to have like hand tracking and things like that. Which reminds me, right, who's heard of the Void? It's bad. Right, before you all go home tonight, on your phones, Google the Void. Oh, so bing, the Void. Says. Basically, the Void is a fully immersive, interactive experience, there's one down in London. They've opened up a nice, great little session based around Star Wars. Shocker, Disney must have sponsored them. They've also got units in California, and two in the States, and they're setting more elsewhere. And what they've done is they've built a custom VR headset, paired it up with some like Magic Leap sensors for hand tracking. They've also paired it with a body shock suit. And they have a fully immersed, tracked environment in VR. And what this effectively means is the fact that they've paired up the actual real world with a VR headset. And I can imagine with the inside-out tracking on these is something quite easy to do, just to take that little step further, except for the cable. These are untethered experiences. So when you actually walk up to a wall in their environment, it's actually there in the virtual environment. So you reach out, you can touch and feel these things. Even so much the fact that they've got one of those big robots out they've got in Force Awakens, I think it was, where you can actually reach out, you can touch it and whack it around the head and just wonder where it's gone as it's talking to you. Most people who've tried VR experiences have gone into that and they've come out speechless, even the pros. So Google, Bing that, search that up later and simply look at the void and look at the videos themselves. It doesn't do itself justice because we've got the virtual environments where you're just virtual because of, apart from vibration in your controllers, you're not getting real feedback sent in the world. With the HoloLens, you've got the real world, so you can go up and see it and touch it and do things with it. But if I put a 3D model in space, I'll put my hand through it. They've gone completely the other way in the fact that, even so much to the fact that they actually have a steam vent. So in the VR, you'll see this huge fire. You walk near it, and you actually feel the heat coming off this thing. It's hard to express just what it is. It just shows the bounds of where you can go with virtuality and what you can do with it if you really think beyond or outside the box. Or in their case, put you in the box and then put a lot of things in with you. But anyway, go on, yes?
Can you pair the mixed reality headset with like a phone?
With
a mobile phone?
Well, at the end of the day, mixed reality is all run off your Windows 10 PC. So yes. Although I'd struck up with 2 mixed reality controllers in your hand, I'm wondering where the phone would go in that. Maybe it's sellotape it around the head. If you've got a phone, and yes, you can obviously add off streaming services and things like that. Because at the end of the day, you are cabled, you are tethered today. Although we are now seeing wireless VR solutions starting to sort of bubble up. Vive have got one coming out, and I think everyone's finger crossed, hoping it's not going to be just the Vive, so we can plug anything else into it. Along with the car battery, you'll have to strap to your back to be able to run the entire thing, but hey. The question is about how the real world plays a role in mixed reality. Now this comes back to the fact that mixed reality is a family. It goes from the entire spectrum of the augmented reality, the HoloLens, all the way up to the virtual reality and in between. Now where the physical thing comes into it with mixed reality realistically is you're going to walk into walls and stuff. You are in a virtual world, but you're working in the physical presence in its sense. Rather than the mixed reality family itself is, today we've got HoloLens, and we've got the immersive or the VR side of that. That is, as you showed before, is an entire range, and it's all to say the fact that future devices may actually have more of a presence in the world to augment into the virtual or coming from augmented into the virtual. The HoloLens does a fantastic job of this, but then again, who's got $5,000 sitting in their back pocket to go and get a headset on and walk around? It is a whole price range of doing things, but it gives you the opportunity to look at how you want to build these things into it. As I said to someone else in the break is that, say you wanted to take the headset, a laptop and walk around a warehouse. So you've got a virtual world and you're walking around, but the only thing that stops you is the actual physical world. So there's nothing to stop you using things like positional dead reckoning or other kind of little technologies to say, right, if I know the scheme of this house, I've got some architectural drawings of saying this is how it's physically laid out. I can work off your actual physical position because the laptop's got a GPS. I'm using positional dead reckoning, so I'm using the magnetosphere of the building and how I'm positioning stuff so I know where I am. So there's nothing to stop you from your actual work actually changing how the world is from walking around it in the virtual world. And you could do that.
So is like you were setting at the boundary at the beginning, is that more for positioning yourself in the space?
So you're spoiling my demo now. But yeah, that's setting up your actual limitations of where you can walk. And that's the same as any other VR environment, is that they give you an actual physical space you can walk around it for what's called room scale. So allow you says, right, I can actually interact with this entire virtual world within the space. Beyond that space, you'll use techniques of what's called teleporting. I'll do a quick demo of that, where instead of walking there, I'm actually simply going to say, right, put me there. And then your 3D view moves. One of the key things you'll find, especially when you start to do VR development, how you move is extremely important. Because because you have this little thing of the fact that you're in your ear and your eyes, and your brain goes, if they don't agree, you're going to throw up. So if you take someone in VR and then hurtle them at 100 miles an hour, you will almost instantly throw up because your brain goes, oh, I'm not moving, but I'm going at 100 miles an hour, that's not right. And it gets really disorientated. Some people have it really badly, some people don't. So there are lots of techniques you're learning through VR when you're doing VR development of how to move the player in a way that's comfortable. Or doing little other tricks where putting things in the scene where your eye can fixate on this, but so it doesn't notice that you're actually walking and moving, or not going as fast as that. I think one of the toolkits, they actually have a mechanism where every step you take is 2, which is fine. But if you make it 3, you'll go and stop. It's strange. But anyway, let's get on to demo then. Right, if anyone wants to actually get started, there is actually a nice little workshop I built for getting you started into this, and it gives you all the setups for actually getting into it, all the tools, setting your own little environment, having to play with some things, and that leads you on then to also, there's the whole Mixed Reality or HoloLens Academy, which teaches you all these things in more detail. This is like a 10-minute run through of, I've got up, I've put on some 3D content, I'll throw my headset on, and I'm in the world. And gives you some nice little sharp tricks of, well, if you put yourself too big, this is what happens. If you put yourself too small, this is what happens. Drop someone in the middle of a cliff when you can walk through it and it's fine. But anyway, I shall leave that up as I move over. So, setting this thing up. So, as I said, when you install the Windows 10 Fold Creator Kit, you get a lovely little app called the Mixed Reality Portal. I forgot the last word. This is the thing that gives you both access to the virtual environment. It also gives you access to the simulator and also access to the store and lots of things. I can put this over here. So we've got lots of little things here, and so we've got like developer stuff down here. So I can use the simulation parts. Again, all built into the tools, nothing else to install. You want to start simulating? Turn them on. I'm not going to do that because I'll spend the next 5 minutes reconfiguring my PC. Great. But when we get set up, so I've got, when you start this up, I've plugged into my PC, I've got my headset. I've got my controllers, these are basically Bluetooth adapters. So exactly the same thing as everyone else, you just pair it to your PC and it's done. The updating of these is handled automatically, so every time you start up the portal, it checks to make sure you're running the right version of firmware and both the controllers and the headset. If it's not updated, it does it for you. Fun. But you start off the headset itself and you're then given a choice. So if you put the headset on, you'll get this lovely, nice little setup experience where you can say, set me up for sitting down or standing. It says sitting down, but yeah, you can stand up and still move around. Well, basically, it won't stop you from going anywhere. It won't give you any limitations, he says. For that setting up, it's a case of you tell it, I'm sitting down, it goes, right, where's your headset? Done. The same setup experience on the Vive and the Oculus is about 10 minutes between pairing your sensors, getting your thing set up, measuring the floor, make sure you have a tape measure ready, things like that. This, nothing. Then we've got the room style experiences, and there's only 2 questions this thing's going to ask you. Is 1, where's your start point? So it's going to first ask you, where's your center? So I'm going to say, there's my headset. I could be holding it, but it doesn't really matter. All it has to do is make sure there's enough light and there's enough distance so you're not, if I put this up against the wall, I'll go, that's not a good start point. If I hold it over here, okay, so that's my start point. Then I'm going to tell it how far around the room can it go. Now this is measuring not just physically where I can bump into walls. You all have got this cable. So how long is your cable? Mine's a bit longer than what you normally have. And all for the do this basically, as the demonstration shows, you just have to walk around your room. Now you do have to do this with a Vive and other environments, but it's a case of what this is going to do. Not quite fully set up. Get back to the beginning, there we go. And done. And that's it. That's my entire virtual reality setup done. That's now in. The portal as well also comes with a nice little previewer, so you can see the world. And now this is going to get tricky. I'll put the headset on. Someone had a very small head. Right. Now, unfortunately, I can't see the microphone, but I can see these controllers. You'll notice the fact that I just walked up to those and simply picked them up because they're positionally tracked perfectly in the real world and how I move these around. You can see the shadows as well. Look, I'm back. This will say if it's moving, there's zero issue in grabbing this. If I do this and hold it still, then it'll actually work perfectly. There you go. And this gives you a full walk around of what this is. Now the environment that you're starting up here, there, is what's called the Cliff House. I've got a huge, who gave me a huge desktop? Let's close that. If I had headsets on, I could actually control this with voice and microphone as well. So you can see I'm just simply moving around. There's a nice view of Mount Rainier off in the distance there. Shave a few millimeters off. Then gives us a nice little walk around. And this is what we're talking about. You've got two ways of walking around. Moved around. So I can physically walk around without tripping over the cable. As I get towards where the edge of my boundary is, you can see this nice little box appears that says, "Oi, watch out, you're about to walk into something." Also, this reacts as well to your controllers, not just the headset itself. So you can see here, this is telling me I'm penetrating my boundary. Sounds good. So that gives you the space you can walk around here. But also then we've got other motions of, I'm going to assume I'm still pointing at the crowd, all the modes of locomotion where we can actually use the controller to then teleport around, and that simply jumps you from one place to another within the virtual environment. So I'm going to move you around. All right. I can go down to that. Here's my favourite experience. Here's my 300-foot TV. Who's got one of these in their house? I know I have. It's great. I even got a sofa, but I would not recommend sitting in it. I don't need to guess why I can sit in this. But one thing is, I can also, there's control on the floor. I need to adjust my floor, really. But I can't put it on the table because it's not there, he says. But it's great because another feature of this, the fact that, which is different to the Vive and the Oculus, is that if I want to focus on an app or an experience, I simply need to teleport to it and it will move me to the actual perfect sitting or viewing location for whatever that is. Let's find another one. Okay. So this could, I'm not running that one because it's not good. Now if you want a nice little view, how about watching a 300-foot TV at night? I mean, a lot of people spent a lot of time just sitting in this virtual cliff house and looking around. It's quite good. Switch to the Star Sky night. See, so it's daylight in my living room, and it's night in my actual cinema room. Haha, he says. Where am I going? And this room is set up. Who's moved my photos now? That's not good. No, I don't want to start photos. Okay, let's move that back on the wall. You can, and the good thing about this is, another thing that goes well with this is the fact that within the virtual environment itself, this has got world space tracking of, so if I put this thing on the wall here, it remembers where it is within this cliff house. And the cliff house gives a good example. There you are over there, okay. Haha. A good example of the place of, if I put this in, it's going to stay there, and every time I run my virtual environment, it's going to put things exactly where they are. The same thing instead of HoloLens, except it does that with the real world. So there's a lot of similarity between these. And my kids have moved the where's the holograms gone? There it is. Where's the hologram gone? Here we are, look. Who's been moving my holograms? The lizard on a bike, here we go. Let's have some fun things. My daughter giggled profusely when she saw this. Hello. I was changing colour. Ha ha ha. The other thing this gives us is full access to everything on a Windows 10 desktop. As I said, this is both a 2D and a 3D immersive environment. So if I wanted to, let's see, I can actually go and browse the web, put that somewhere, and go and search for something. I can go and browse the store, but also you get access to other 3D apps and things. You see, so let's have a look. Oh, not Galaxy Explorer, that's not great. Oh yeah. There's one app I recommend to anyone to... Oh, what's that? It's lost the image. So when you launch a 3D immersive application itself, it's going to take you from that 2D world into the fully immersed 3D environment. So you can see I'm starting off this little bubble, and it's giving you a nice little presentation of where I am in the space station. This is using two things. So if I didn't have these controllers, this also works with just gaze, but as I've activated these things. Oh, look, there we are, there's the space station. So there we go. Welcome to the International Space Station, everyone. And if any of you get hold of these headsets, the great thing about this is there's lots of videos, nice little educational content, and this is what you look like in zero gravity. Hair. Great. But anyway, let's go back out of that. You can see it's quite a free-form experience themselves. One thing, interesting thing to note, the fact that for when you're building through virtual applications and you're building from Windows Mixed Reality, by default you're going to get one of these kind of poster wall things, which is okay, but it's not exactly immersive, as it were. You can also have these 3D holograms. This is available to all developers when they publish applications. All you need is to have a model associated with your project, and that will be it. Now, that will, I'm looking over there. Okay, so that might be one thing, but as I said as well, you also have access to a full Steam VR library. So if I wanted to, I'll Steam already now. Updating Steam. I know it's up to date. I updated it just before it came out. Not a wise move, but hey ho, it worked. Rolling. Aha. Yep. Now you can see I've already got several VR titles there. Now, apart from installing an app, which basically says, this is the Windows Mixed Reality for Steam VR. It's like a little extension to Steam VR. That's it. I don't have to do anything else. It just works. So any Steam VR title, it will automatically launch Steam VR once you're in the Cliff House ready and waiting, and off it go. I've been playing that for a while now. That is the only way to play Elite. If anyone here play Elite? One person! VR is the only way to play this game, hands down. If you want to, try it, and then you'll never play it the same way again. Believe me. But there's lots of little things here. Like I said, the Star Wars droid repair is great. You're sitting there as a nice little droid with two little arms and fixing droids, and watching the Empire nastily come up and then shoot on your cruiser. Nasty. But basically, the entire Steam VR library is all working. Now, what Steam have also done is within their store, they've also added a Windows Mixed Reality category for VR, which I now can't find. Here we go. There are some titles which, for whatever reason, don't, but basically they've added this Mixed Reality category, which basically means these are all approved and definite work. The ones that don't work are very odd. So one game which I tried on the Vive, Spiral Prologue, Downward Spiral Prologue. It's a fantastic game. You're in space, moving around. I ran it in Mixed Reality and it wouldn't, well, the game would start, but you couldn't do anything. As if it was waiting for you to press a button, but you didn't know what it was. So there's odd things where it doesn't work, but generally speaking, 95% of all the titles are on Steam VR will just work because the adapter works. The ones that don't, it's just a few little tweaks and it's dead easy to fix. So when you're building titles for Mixed Reality, it's dead easy. I shall hand back.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Simon.